So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. I know there's a lot of people on already. A lot of people are saying hello. Um, Let me just introduce. I don't think he needs any introduction, but Tony Stockwell. He's the man, the myth, the legend. We like to blow his head up. No, but Tony is an amazing medium, an amazing human being, and funny. I can't swear on this one, but he's very funny. I was going to say funny AF. Anyway, though, he's got books. He's had his own TV shows. He teaches around the world. He demonstrates mediumship around the world. He's actually one of my mentors. People always ask me. I would say Lisa Williams and Tony Stockwell were my main teachers here. I think I actually flew to England for a year to work with Tony in his studio over there in a mentorship for a year time. And then when I came back, I was in a 2-year online one. So technically 3 years I dealt with him as a teacher. So, and I will say he helped me develop my mediumship and pushed me to a level that I'm very thankful for today. So without further ado, I really just kind of want to get into the conversation, Tone. I mean, the topic is, does mediumship evolve? And I also felt this morning, and also aspects of evidence, right? And I think that we could probably look at those two things. So this is really just a discussion. I'm really just wanting to kind of pick your brain and see what comes. I've actually just asked the spirit world really to direct the conversation here with that. But when I say does mediumship evolve, I mean, especially you've been doing it now, what is it, 20, 30 years?
Hold on a minute. I've been actually doing it for 35 years.
35 years. So just from where you started, right? From where you began and you started in development and sitting in circles and stuff like that, have you seen mediumship evolve in any way?
Oh, other people's generally. Yes, certainly. If you look at individuals, you'll see a lot of evolvement, especially with student mediums, if you take under your wing. And I had a conversation 2 hours ago with one of I say my ladies, but a lady that I know very well. And she's doing so well. And she said something like, you must take a great deal of comfort, or, you must be so pleased that we're all doing brilliantly. And of course, yes, I am. So you see from start to finish, when they sort of leave me and they fledge and they go do their own thing, there's a huge amount of stuff that goes on in those years where they're trying to develop something marvelous. If you're looking at just mediumship as such, I don't know. I mean, I was very lucky enough to sit with some very great mediums. Ursula Roberts, which maybe a lot of people don't know, but she was phenomenal. I've sat a number of times watching Gordon Higginson and Albert Best and Mary Duffy, and these are all names that I know very well. What they translate, but just let people know they were amazing workers. Do I still see that same amazingness? Yeah, I think I do. I do see that. Last year I was in the States and I was working with James Van Prague, and we shared a demonstration. Well, his second half was phenomenal. Absolutely. So it happens. But I think mediumship is, especially when we're demonstrating, it's up and down, isn't it? It can't just be me.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I have some dems I can walk away thinking, I don't think I like it anymore. And then other dems, it could be the next day and think, God, I'm amazing. And you start to recognize it's got very little to do with the medium. It's all about the atmosphere and the people assembled and the need of the individuals, and can you recognize those needs? But generally, I think mediumship has certainly changed. And so maybe that's evolving, because it's changing with the needs of our community that will seek us out, which is hugely important.
Yeah. See, in where I'm thinking, right, and when I think that mediumship evolves in some way, and of course it's great to hear, from you, because you've been doing it for 35 years, literally. I'm saying in the sense of, like, something came to me, I don't know, maybe a year ago. I don't know the timing of it, but I felt really from spirit that mediumship has to evolve to some degree, okay, because of technology. So technology, I feel as though, and if we know that there's an intelligence of the spirit world, right? We know there's an intelligence of the spirit world. We know that technically time, right? We believe that there's no time there. And if you look at quantum now, I think it was a year ago, they found out through a quantum experiment that time is all happening at one singular point, right? So even the time that we live in, it technically isn't real, but it's linear to us, right? So if time isn't real, the spirit world then would already know by the intelligence of it that that technology is ruining mediumship. Because, and the reason why I'm saying this, when you look at a lot of people, especially people that I read for, a lot of people already, I want to say 70% probably think that you've already looked them up. It's unfortunate, right? And so with technology now, with so many different social media profiles and everything like that, I see it as, and I feel like I use you to say that, coin that phrase, is what do they see of our world, right? What does the spirit world see of our world? Because becomes so evidential, because now there's so much that people can find online about deceased people, loved ones. I mean, again, you go back 15 years ago when you're doing the work, it's not as easy, right? But nowadays it's like hyperbole with the social media, different profiles and everything else that's listed on there. Does mediumship need to evolve into a point? I'm not saying need, that's a strong word. Does mediumship evolve, or does the spirit world already know that it's changing to a point to get into more of what do they see of our world? Because that becomes more of the evidence compared to, I have, your dad, his name was Joe, and he died in his 70s. He was in the military, and he died of a heart attack. All very good things. I'm not denying that in any way. I'm saying that easily could be looked up potentially now. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I do see that.
And I come from, and you would probably know this, I have a very skeptical mind, right? I didn't believe in any of this stuff. I remember seeing John Edward on TV years before I started to develop. And I remember those people are paid actors, and I changed the channel. And then, it started to happen to me. And then, and here I am today. But through my skepticism mind, that's why I feel like in some sense or in some way, when we start to bring in evidence that way, would the intelligence of the spirit world not already know that technology in some way is ruining mediumship? Again, the general, and I'll use your terminology, muggle here in America, and I'm sure it's probably the same in England, do feel that we can do that. Mediums, they look people up. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, people have been saying that for years. I mean, I'm going back long enough where we would never accused of anything like that, but people might say, be careful what you leave out in your trash, because there was no technology as such. So people actually would think they'd go through we'd say bins, you say trash, and look out for old envelopes, and like you've got the time and could be bothered to do that. But so there is that part of what we do is, or can be potentially, so phenomenal that for someone who cannot believe it, it makes no sense. So they start to look for a logical, how the heck can that possibly be? If you're reading for someone and you list her daughter's name and so on and so forth, details surrounding her passing. It must come from somewhere else. Now, we of course know that information comes from a source, hits our consciousness eventually as soul-to-soul information happens, and then what we need to say bubbles up into our conscious understanding, and we deliver it in language. So I don't know. I mean, what do we do? I'm constantly encouraging anyone that will listen to me to not rely on the traditional relationship, age, passing condition, personality, and so forth, and almost this tick list, because it's a bit rigid these days. And I think you can get so much more, I'm not saying better than, but so much more to complement the I feel it's your father, am I in my 80s as I pass, as you already said. And it is exactly as you already intimated, that yesterday he saw you. Now, I read for a guy, I don't want to go on too much about different stories, but It was about 3 weeks ago. I read for a man over Zoom because obviously all this going on. And he was very young, you know. I thought he was 50, turned out to be 60. His wife had just died. She came through, got the whole cancer story. It was there. The kids alive. The kids missed their mum. And I'm kind of wrapping up the reading, you know, an hour later thinking, you know, I'm not doing bad here. It was evidential. And I think that guy would pretty much have thought what you've just, you know, suggested. People might think this stuff. So he asked me, he said, can she not tell you anything me or my daughters do since she's passed? And then I go, oh, yeah, I should have remembered that, shouldn't I? You know, rather than tell everybody else to do it, I should have remembered that. And I don't say I said much. I don't say I said much. But I said something like, you light a candle and watch it flicker. Now, the guy's reaction was really kind of lovely, in as much he said he lights a candle every night and he asks and prays for her, move the candle flame. Now, again, others might think, oh, I think I've done that too, but maybe so. But he did it religiously, and that sort of changed everything. The mood changed completely. Then I went on to talk about how she walks with her daughter every day by the beach. The daughter lives on the beach. She walks every day thinking of her mother crying. And there was a number of things like that that were, and this is not a word I appreciate, non-Googleable. You know, we'll have to add it to the dictionary. But and so it is those things, as you rightly say, that defy logic. You know, you've got grandmother's carrot cake recipe squished in the back of a recipe book. Yesterday you looked at the recipe and you traced her handwriting with your finger. We can do that stuff. We do that stuff all the time. And so those things, because they cannot and do not exist outside, can be so much more effective and emotive and real to the recipient. So I think, you know, to quickly answer your question here, I think we need to use a balance of structured technical know-how, in as much 49 man, etc. And would you remember? And would he now know? And can you accept that? And talk about what they're doing in the other world, what they see of our world, and who they've met since they've passed. All of these things are not going to exist outside, and can therefore be so much more evidential and believable to those who seek us out.
Yeah, and what you're saying too, in the sense of, when I think of what do they see of our world, and I always say, I feel like I would say that I've heard it from you. I've learned that from you, really. I mean, I remember going to England. I was very rigid with my evidence. It had to be this way. You know, I remember I took Janet Havoc's book, Where Two World Meet, and I just took her chapter systems in there, and she has all these numbers, all different evidence you could bring through. And I picked out what I thought was a good reading. I wrote it down. I used to read it every day. This is what I want from the spirit world. It actually started to work, and I was like, I can't believe this is working. But it was like kind of like that, you know, boom, boom, boom. And I remember being in England, and I remember it's always like I can almost hear your voice there, and say, Anthony, your evidence is great. Let go. What do they want to say? You know, and that's when I finally started to let go. And the interesting part of it is, over these years now, that's where I feel like a lot of this, you know, that personal evidence of something that they just did, conversation that they just had, even to the point of a name of someone they just talked with there, that kind of comes up. And it's like, yeah, how do you know that? You know, makes it so much more, I want to say, real to the sitter at times. But the interesting part of that, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, is because in the mediumship world, in the cliques of mediumship, let's call it that, a lot of people say that that's psychic. And that's why I feel like is interesting to me, because it's now I feel like it's almost being labeled as, well, that's just psychic there when you're picking up that information. But realistically, I see that as, again, is the sense of the intelligence of the spirit world. You know, let's just say husband coming forward and I'm reading for the wife, and he brings up the conversation she just had with her coworker to the
Mm-hmm.
T. You know what I mean? 2 days prior to the reading,
Yeah.
there. And like I said, it to me, I know in the sense of how I work, where my energy is, where I'm working psychically, where I'm working mediumistically, there. But I feel like it's gotten a bad rap in some way. Do you understand what I'm saying
Yeah.
here? Like in that war, in our mediumship cliques, in development
Yeah.
circles. I've had old students come back even and say, send me a message. This circle leader said I was going psychic. There, I said, well, what did you bring up? Well, I brought up that they were just at the wedding 2 weeks ago, and I said, what are you talking about? I literally took out Janet's book, chapter 14, systems. It's the last number there. I took a screenshot, a picture, and I sent it. I said, let's bring this to your circle leader. Here's Janet talking about. They'll bring up things that you just did. There.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see that? Do you see that at all?
I do, and I find firstly the people that criticize the workers for what they do, if they believe they're going psychic, mediumistic, they invariably can't do it as well as their student. You see, I know that sounds a bit tough, but I'm have to consider what is psychic, and psychic isn't what it is. Psychic isn't what we've been led to believe. Psychic is simply the reader's own innate soul's knowing. So if I'm reading for you and you're reading for and I say to you, they saw you playing basketball with your son. I know you've been feeling really excited over a new project, and your grandfather says he's going to be with you every way and all the way. Where that information comes from may be a balance of what I receive from the departed, from those who have gone before us, and something that my own soul self feels about my client. And so I really enjoy working psychically, because I don't think psychic comes from the brain. I think it comes from our soul. So the reader is not just a receiver of detail downloaded, but is fully involved on a soul level, linking the incarnate soul being with the discarnate soul beings. And we have a vital part to play in that. So if, we talk about, I feel it's your birthday, it is. She's singing happy birthday. It's like our innate soul's knowing can really move the conversation on, where spirit starts to respond and they get involved and this kind of thing. And I don't know if it's a bit of a long story. I'll give a very brief version of this. I keep telling the same story because it's such a good one. But I was in Birmingham and working in an old synagogue for a Buddhist group. So it's an eclectic night. And I read for this lady from her mother who's recently departed. And I say to this lady, thank you very much indeed. I'm done. It was a standard message from her mother, gone. And on that day, I bought myself some Rumi cards, the Alana Fairchild deck, beautiful cards. And I said, before I go, and I think I felt a little bit more at ease with myself, as opposed to being in sort of a high church environment, where I was in that sort of ex-synagogue and with the Buddhist group. And I thought, it wouldn't really matter. So I just pulled a few cards for her. She said it was okay. And as I look at the cards, my psychic brims forth, and I go, would you know the story of the young girl that gets in a man's car from a parade of shops and she's never seen again? Where does that come from? And then the lady says, so that's why I'm here. My daughter's missing. And so, okay. And then the mother that I've already said goodbye to comes back and starts to advise her daughter in the audience about the granddaughter's disappearance. And that really changed so much for me, because I'd already worked with this lady from her mother and had not been able to access with normal mediumship what the mother in the spirit world wanted to tell her daughter who was in a state. I needed some communication, some psychic. This I invoked it with some cards, which was my own soul's knowing. That's where it came from. And then the grandmother to advise her daughter of the granddaughter's disappearance. It went on. So those who say that's psychic, that is, I would say so. Because I think in a contact, there needs to be enough evidence, but we also need to help with the conversation, and our own feelings about a given situation is immensely important. So I think good psychic, again, I repeat myself desperately, is simply your own soul's knowing. So good psychic coupled and complemented by spirit information really makes for the best of information all round. You can't stop being psychic because it's your own soul's knowing. People think psychic comes from the brain. It doesn't. It comes from the heart. So absolutely, I would encourage everyone to work with a balance of good soul's knowing and the soul's knowing of the departed.
Yeah.
So
you know, it's interesting too, because like I said, there's the aspect of, and I think, like, you know, the terminology psychic has such a stigmata to it almost now, like a stigma to it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, he's going psychic, you know. And I think in a reading, especially if, you know, if you get a psychic hit and you're working mediumistically, and what's the problem anyway? Just telling the person that well, you know what, I'm getting this psychically. I need to give you this. It's coming up. I need to say this, but let me tell you, I'm getting it psychically. Blah 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 blah. I feel this, this, and this, and now let me just get back with your dad here in this world, and let's, you know, work on in that sense or in that way. You know, the other aspect, right, where, so I'm going to kind of switch this up here a little bit, and this is why I feel like, let me just pick your brain with this, because you know, when I've literally heard almost debates, right, there, and I hear them, I guess, because of, you know, with having students now, and they go out and do their thing, and they have other teachers, and then it comes back. And listen, I always tell people, especially anyone when they start working with me in any way, I tell them, I don't have the ultimate truth. I don't have it. No one does. Do we realize that? No one has the ultimate truth here, there, of what mediumship is really going on in the other world. We have, you know, different trance, and we could sit in meditation and sit on mountaintops and meditate on it and ask the spirit world to show us. But at the end of the day, it's really core beliefs, right? There in that way. So when I hear these other things about, you know, I hate to use the word British mediumship there in that way, that, you know, a lot of people would say, well, you should just got to stick with evidence, evidence, evidence. And God forbid you bring anything up besides the spirit person, then that's psychic. You know, there's these kind of camps, I'll say, people that kind of lump that in that. So if you brought up something about the sitter's life, or something they just did, or a conversation they just had, you got that psychically. You didn't get that from there. And so I say it this way because I feel like it's my belief now. I feel like my belief has changed to some degree. When we're looking at psychic, right? When we're just talking about our deceased loved ones, those that are in the spirit world that we're connected to by the bond of love, and we are going to be the voice of this voiceless, why wouldn't they bring up things that they see now, things that have just happened? I'm not saying predicting, you know, future things, but hey, if there's a baby coming, they may, right? Wouldn't they not know that already? There, would they not know that? But I'm not saying I'm giving you a psychic reading that I'm going to predict that you're getting a new job in 3 months and you're going to be switched. That's, to me, is like more psychic. I'm giving you predictions from the other world. I'm saying what we were just talking about, what they're seeing. If I don't bring that up now, and I just stay keeping them deceased, just speaking about, and they're just giving me evidence of them, could I not be reading the person's aura? Because technically, if my father's still alive, knock on wood, there, but if my father would pass, technically my father's name, his birthday, how he passed, memories, childhood memories, my hurts of my dad, my joys with my dad, the cars that my dad had, everything is technically within my aura. is it not?
Yeah.
So if I'm just keeping them in evidence of the communicator, who's to say that I'm not just reading someone psychically?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It would be possible to glean that, in as much you may see a client tomorrow and she walks in, sits down, and you say, "You've just lost your mum." And in truth, and you might say, "She's not here yet, but give me a minute, and hopefully she'll come." Because as she comes in, the feeling of the daughter as she walks in the room suggests to you you're in deep grief. It's your mother you've lost. You can easily sense that without the mother telling you she's passed. Absolutely. And that's why sometimes good psychic can really complement your mediumship, because you can assess, I can feel you've lost your mum. Let's see if we can get her. Shall we do that? Oh, yes, please. And then you go on a mission to go get them. You're absolutely right. All of that information is contained within your sitter. But what I think is also very plausible is, if those people listening only restrict their mediumship to, nuts and bolts of man, age, name, height, build, personality, persona, etc., and so on and so forth. As spirit comes close, if you only restrict your information to talking of these things, you could actually be psychometrizing the soul as they come close. So you may have a man come close saying, "That's my daughter, I've just gone over to the spirit world. Is she okay? Talk about Martha, I've got the cat." But we say, "Man, 5'5", blonde sandy hair, passes to Cancer, 87 3/4. Do you understand? Good." And they not know what else to do with him. So, but that information, in likelihood is he doesn't tell us that. The likelihood when spirit comes close, they do not tell us they were 87. We feel they're 87. So we are using the psychic that people criticize us for, because we are on a soul. Well, it's not. Oh, there's so much to say. We are feeling him on an earth level. We are psychometrizing him on an earth level. Sometimes, though, you could argue sometimes he does say, "I was 100 years old." Of course there is. But I really think as mediumship progresses, I'm encouraging all of my students to come away from this cert principle, this idea of height, build, and etc. Now, I said, not so long back, and I got myself in a little hot water to a rather large group. And I said, this business about, name and date and what he looked like. And I said, that's for baby groups. And I think I stand by that to some degree. If I was taking a new group from spiritual awareness into psychic development into mediumship, I may well say, look, the first thing you want to do is let's get into this feeling. What do you got? Male or female? Dad, granddad, uncle, lover, brother, what are you going to get? And I would take them through this almost like a questionnaire. But no one told us after a while you should let it go. And I think we want to let go of that ticking off a list system and become far better at telling the story of the soul who comes close. And I would rather ditch man 80, 5'9", and had a military background, and I would much rather bring him and say, "Do you know, I've got a gentleman here with cake all around his face. I know this man will do anything for cake," because that in itself, plus some other stuff, could be so much more delightful and enthralling and believable and more unique a way of describing granddad, who literally was a cake monster, in the course of his life. And in addition, if you can also say his name was Bob, then go for it, absolutely. But I think it's telling their story is the way forward. And forgive me for going on here, but I was, we have a place was the Arthur Findlay College, Stansted Hall, which I'm very lucky to tutor at. And a lot of the people I work with there are far more open-minded than people, realize. We're all looking for something more. It's a progressive place. And I gave one afternoon with a group there, and I said, look, let's stop talking about this tick system and let's tell the story. So I did about 8 different examples of letting spirit come close and letting them wash like a big multi-faceted feeling for me to interpret. And it was simple, like I've got a man, I'm Welsh, I'm granddad, I'm a Welsh coal miner who understands simple information, but there's only one hand that went up. Then I got better, a lady that worked for a public house called the Pig and Whistle. No, it still worked, but I didn't know it was mum or grandma or auntie at that point. It was just a way of placing the spirit people with a willing recipient. So it does go on. It's very debatable, quite contentious, and people have very strong views. But I'm really happy for everyone to have their own views, but do your own thing. That's absolutely fine. Let's all do our own thing. But what worries me is the people, if you already suggested there, Anthony, it's people that bleat on almost like they want to report you because they think you've gone psychic or you're not doing it the right way. We're all individuals. Describe them as you wish. There's nothing wrong with saying, I've got a man here that remembers once eating a goldfish. Where am I? There's nothing wrong with that, because if it's true, place him like that. As long as we're placing them respectfully and helpfully, and we're doing it with zest and fun and believe in what we've got, let it be creative. Otherwise, it's going to become so formulaic. We'll be open to such comparisons. I don't think it'd be very enjoyable.
Yeah. You know, that's interesting because at times too, like I've even seen where there's people that like mediumship, right? Mediumship in the sense, like the word mediumship. It does. A medium is a conduit between two worlds, right? It's a conduit between two worlds. I know what we do is evidential mediumship, right? We bring through evidence of loved ones, deceased friends, family, loved ones there that in my, let me just say, in my world there of how I do readings of people that are connected by a bond of love in some way. I'm not down up, Michael Jackson. But maybe you could. That's not for me to comment on. I'm just saying in my world how it works for me. But in a sense here too, I always bring up where, I think lately I've seen people people have come to me and said, well, this one said I was doing it wrong, or I'm doing this wrong and that wrong. And again, I feel like, well, that's their opinion, because we all have, again, no one has the ultimate truth.
Yeah.
I think of, again, a medium, whether they be a angel communicator or, they're speaking to spirit guides, so working through trance readings and working through a spirit guide there. I guess it becomes evidential in some way of what's happening in the sitter's life, right? But it's not my place to judge. Like, it's not my place to say, well, that's not right. It should be just evidence. You know what I mean? A medium is a conduit between two worlds. I think of, I've become friends with a gentleman, Paul Selig, that has, he's a channel and he works with these beings that they're the guides. He has like 7 or 8 books out that have been perfectly dictated. There's not even an editor that comes along and edits the book. That's how perfect it comes through him. This was a professor, I believe he was NYU, and then eventually he left because this work, continued on. I remember earlier on years, he was doing a meetup group in New York City, and now he's traveling. Well, not right now because of the pandemic, but every weekend he's in a different spot. He's been in England a couple times now too. They're doing workshops, right? And I think he's a medium. He's a conduit between these two worlds, even though these are guides, and it's for, it's really about, Christ consciousness and about uplifting humanity in some way. It's still being a medium. And therefore, why do we put rules? Or I feel like some people want to put rules on how we work. And yet, kind of like you said, we all have our ability, right? I don't like to call it gifted. I don't know why, because I don't want it to be like an ego. I'm gifted, like we all have our ability, right? And we all have a specific aspect of ourself that we're good at. And I feel the spirit world wants to work with that, but yet we're put into a box. You're told to go do this, this, this. It has to be this way, this way, this way. And then therefore, people's true I'll call gifts, true ability, true gifts don't never really come out because they're kind of put into that, well, it should be done X, Y, Z. I see it a lot with teachers now, people that teach mediumship there. I'm not saying to go and just grab someone, give them a reading and to be totally wrong and tell them that you were right. And that's not what I'm saying. I have a huge ethics and integrity of this work. I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be the traditional put you in a box. I always say to a route like Paul Selig, I say, when to students, I said, do you imagine someone told him he was wrong? Look at this guy has written 7 books. They're like 300-400 pages that he dictated. And like I said, he's helping humanity change in some way. His following has increased. He's out there, he's doing his thing. And I said, do you imagine someone told him he was doing it wrong?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like
I think you're absolutely right. So mediumship in itself is a very big umbrella. That's the thing. So, but most people, when they talk about mediumship, they're actually looking at a tiny part of it, which is the evidence of survival evidence, really, survival evidence. So mediumship isn't just survival evidence. It's everything else. It is working with, before this, I've done 2 trance sit-ins today. This morning I worked on a case of a missing person because I work with with detection. I've done 2 trance readings. I've critiqued a demonstration for a lady who's an aspiring medium, and something else that's gone from my brain, a healing. So it's all mediumship, even the detection is, because it's mediumship, because my own higher self has to be elevated to feel the discarnate thought of the man who went before me. And it's a more of a lucid interpretation. All I'm going to say here is, for anyone that's listening, it's a much bigger world than you've been led to believe. And the spirit world is diverse, and those who inhabit that world have different interests and different skill sets. And not everyone needs to be, I've got a woman type of a medium. When, again, actually one of my Irish ladies I spoke today, who was the most amazing trance healer, getting the most amazing results through her trance healing, is still mediumship. She's done all the classes, and that's where she's settled on at the moment. So I think, again, we don't need to pigeonhole ourselves. We are multifaceted soul workers. And I'm so careful what I say, but I can picture in my mind a number of people that I've met internationally that are very rigid in their mediumship. I don't think they're that happy either when they're doing it. Because it's just me that thinks a lot of people that do it can be a little bit grumpy with their students, a little bit mean on people. And I've encountered that all over the world. And I think, that's the kind of medium they are, is it? And I'm always reminded of anything that Maya Angelou ever said or did. But, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And I'm always marked by that, in as much something will happen with a colleague or somebody I know, and I'm getting to know, and they kind of, I don't know, become like this mean girl, if you like. And I think, that's the kind of person you are. And I don't want to go off on a tangent here, Anthony, but the amount of times over the years people have said to me, he or she's not a terribly nice person. Why don't the spirit world take away their gift? Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
And it's because the gifts are ours. They don't belong to other people to take away from us, etc. But I think this now, after all these years, I don't know if we should be taking people into development so easily. Years ago, and I'm going back to, I know lots of people talk about the late Gordon Higginson. I say I knew him. I met him, a good number of times, and was able to go to his lectures and demos, etc. But I knew the standard in those days. Bearing in mind, I've been doing this since 1985. And I used to go to these different meetings. And as a very, very young, aspiring medium, I had no chance of ever being invited into the upper echelons of the work as it was, unless you were literally sought out. So not everyone would even be invited into a workshop environment. They would we'd all go to lectures and demonstrations. And then on occasion, someone would go around, they've asked to see one of the group. And it's that one person they would then take under their wing and help them to develop, because they would see something exceptional about one of the students. It was as rare as that at this time. So I think this, Anthony, I think we should do a lot more, and all those training mediums listening and workers alike, we should set up a lot more classes and courses with regards to spiritual development, and watch, because as a result of those who take to the spiritual development, their own soul rises and takes precedence over their human. The consequence of their own spiritual journey, or rather, more not the consequence, maybe the consequence of their own spiritual journey, is mediumship. Mediumship happens at the person, as opposed to they go and fudge it, force it to bloom. And I think that, this sounds terribly mean. Maybe those people are so rigid and only ever want this hard fact. It's because mediumship didn't come naturally. When mediumship evolves, grows, and begins to shine as a consequence of a ton of meditation, self-reflection, self-analysis, trying to do the right thing and trying to be a good person, it never comes in this rigid way. It comes as feeling, because it's true mediumship, as is really just levels and waves of inspiration that we cobble together as a message. But when it comes as inspiration, it's always right and invariably works, but it may not follow this rigid path.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I mean, I know for me in early on when everything started happening to me, and it was like for me, I got sober and I believed in God, but I never was raised religious. So I always believed in some sort of power that was greater than myself, even when I was younger. But I was never raised religious. So when I got sober and I was wondering, why am I here? I should be dead. And I kind of just surrendered and asked God, why am I here? And I started saying this prayer for a week, and that's when everything started happening, and weird synchronicities started happening, and then before I know it, I'm, I taught myself how to meditate, and that's when I started to hear. And I'm thinking I'm crazy now, because how am I even going to tell people? How am I going to tell people that I'm hearing things when I was just on drugs and I just got sober? They're going to think I'm back on drugs again. You know what I mean? So now I'm like, what, this whole thing? And then I heard direct voice once, and I thought someone was. I was in my condo alone. I thought someone was playing a trick on me. I lived by myself, but I figured one of my friends got into my place. I had to get up out of meditation and kind of look, and there was no one there. But early on, I felt like from spirit, like my development aspect though wasn't really so much mediumship development. I was learning about energy, and I was, I started doing psychic readings after someone kind of came along and were helping me. But it was real clear to me in the beginning, my first couple of years was about development of me, of my soul, my spirit, and unlearning, I guess, the things that I've learned, like the cliche of Yoda, you know what I mean? You must unlearn the things that that you've learned, and working through trauma and healing, and still today, I'm still doing that there as well. But early on for me, the beginning part of it was self-development, and I felt spirit made that real clear to me. Like, this isn't just about speaking to the dead. This is about, you're going to transform spiritually there. And it was like, I couldn't, at my first year of when I was, I'd just gotten sober, literally about a month or 2 months when all this started to happen to me. And so the first year I couldn't afford TV there, because I was really on rock bottom. And so I read. That's all I did. I would read, and then people would start mailing me books. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to read this next. I would read like Dr. Brian Weiss, Anita Mujami, Dying to Be Me. And I would read anything metaphysical, anything that was either sent to me, or most of the things, believe it or not, people sent me books there. And so, it was a development of soul, and it kind of leads me into my last thing here too, or moving away. I mean, I guess it is still part of the mediumship, soul work, right? When we talk about soul readings, and I know my experience was I've never worked with them, never did them until when I was in England. I remember it clearly, because it was probably the best weekend that we had. Well, I felt that was the best weekend we had, just from the energy of the weekend. We did we were in England in your mentorship, and we did like a weekend of soul work, and you would pair us off, and you would ask us to get like the gifts from their soul and stuff like that. And I remember just leaving there, and the group was just so united. It was like that weekend was like the weekend to remember out of the whole year there. Now, I've seen it though in the progression of my own work now is, and I used to do more of them. Unfortunately, I don't, and that's probably my fault there. But because I'm just more, people just come to speak to their loved ones at this point now. There, but the soul readings, I've seen people transform. I've seen people that have been in traditional therapy for a year or 2 years, and they've come, 2 or 3 soul readings, and it's like these women come back in, their shoulders back. They're able to look at you in the eyes. They're always looking down at the floor with shame and guilt and whatever was happening. And then as you work with them in that to that soul capacity and do that reading and start to pull out some of those traumas, and you're not doing, I'm not doing the healing for them. I'm just showing them where that rooted cause is. And then they still have to go and do the work, right? They have to go do the work in that. Do you see a progression anywhere with that? My belief is that is the way of therapy down the road. I do believe at some point. I'm not saying that I don't believe that traditional therapy will ever be taken away. I'm not saying that. I'm saying though, if good soul readers that also are clinically, they have degrees in psychology, there could go in, pull out that trauma, kind of like hypnotherapy, right? Hypnotherapy, you regress a person back to that trauma, and then the trauma is supposed to be released, right? So if you pull out that trauma there, and the soul takes you there. That's the interesting part. When you start to work with it, it's like you go back. I feel I'm 5, 6, 7 here. I'm there, and whatever the abuse is or whatever happened there at that point. Do you see that at all, or do you work with that?
Yeah, well, I do, because I work with it all. I do work with it all the time, and the weirdest thing is, for those people who don't know what soul reads, so basically, you have mediumship, big umbrella, but mainly it's presenting people with saying things that defy logic of who they are, then God willing what they do, what they see, who they're with, heartfelt message. Psychic is dealing with your client's human experience. How do you know that? Health, wealth, love affairs, children, education. How do you know it? Because your soul knows it. And then the soul reading is when you, the reader, becomes so effervescent on a soul level, you can reach your client, concentrating on why are you in the world, what are you here to learn, what it is you're trying to offer, what are your soul's gifts, how does spirit support you, who guides and guards you, these kinds of things. So weirdly enough, since the lockdown, I've taken on, I think maybe half a dozen mediums, and it's an intensive program, so it's one-to-ones and demonstrations and lots of me talking. And they'll tell you, I'm telling them now, modern day worker, whether you're a reader or a demonstrator, I'm encouraging everyone. It's a balance now between good mediumship, insightful psychic, and heartfelt soul readings. And we're doing that in the presentations, and we're doing that in the one-to-one readings. So I've been working on this since, the last couple of months. And it's not bit of psychic, some mediumship, and some soul. It's doing this constantly. And what it's leaving the reader with is always a feeling of feeling effervescent and up, never down or depleted. Is a smile on their faces. The recipients are gaining so much more from it because it's insightful. You're being helped and to consider who you are, why you're here. The loved ones are here. They come to guide and guard you, and this is how you might get out of this human problem that you're in at this time. And so, yes, I do work with all 3 modalities at least, and I'm trying to do that increasingly in my own demonstrations, certainly in my readings. But can I just quickly say here, a colleague of mine were talking just very briefly today, and I said, just chatting, you've been busy with reading. She said, oh yeah, I've been busy enough, ticking over. It's been all right. She said, I said, you've not been really busy? And she said, no, not normal. Now, compared to what's going on with the world, you would think people like ourselves and those listening, we would all be so busy because everyone's searching for answers. You'd agree. But because the majority have got now a reputation of being very good at what they do, presenting spirit people, but don't let the spirit people say anything, don't feel why they've truly come and what is the big message, it's still only so applicable to today's need. If anyone here that's listening finds themselves in a advantageous position of being able to work with spirit and truly feel why they've come, what is their advice, how can we move on with our world, work with the soul and embrace the psychic. I love psychic work, absolutely love it. I'm known for my mediumship, no question. But put me on a one-to-one, I love the psychic. And it's not psychic such as telling people what to do. It's not true. Good psychic presents the current situation, the future trends, and it simply then helps the recipient negotiate the bends and the twists and the turns. And without again going on, but a good friend of mine who's a brilliant psychic, she's about 2 years ago, I was buying a house and she came to visit and I drove her outside this house, which I thought was amazing. And I said, that's the house. She said, no, you're not having that. And I was so cross with her. And then she predicted the house that I now live in to the T. So then I drove her outside this house and I thought she won't recognize it. It was some months later. That's the one, she said. That's the one you're having. And it was not negotiable. That's the one, and that's definitely not the one. Now, we have to be careful. We don't want to influence people's lives. But I tell you now, good psychics are worth their weight in gold. The problem we have is people believe in themselves to be good psychics that are doing a terrible job. And you could say that for mediums that think they're marvelous, and please stop doing that, and soul readers that really need to work on their own. But we can't make small the gifts of our soul because we're trying to protect ourselves against the people that think they can do it but can't. You have to lead with your own brilliance and show people how it's done. And after all of these years, I'm no longer going to disrespect the work of the psychic reader or the soul reader or the medium in whichever capacity they work. I think let's all chill out. Let's try to get better at our own skill sets and stop looking about what other people are doing. Let's just do it well and do our best to bring some light.
Yeah. That was Deb, wasn't it? That was Deb that predicted your house.
Yeah,
I heard the story. She gave me a reading. I was in Phoenix actually, and some 3 people in a week brought her up to me, and I was like, "Oh, this is weird. There's got to be something here." So I messaged her, and I was in Phoenix in a hotel teaching, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll call you in a half hour." And anyway, she told me the story about your house because she predicted a house for me. There. And I was like, "Oh."
Well, she's a great reader.
She's wonderful. I tell everyone, you want a good psychic reading, here you go. Because she's amazing. There. There's 2 things there too, and then I know we'll wrap it up here. So 2 things. One, I'm just happy that you said that about working on all levels, because, a lot of times I've been doing a mentorship now, I guess it's got to be 2 years now or 2.5 years. I've been doing a mentorship. So I do like a 6-month mentorship and I take 10 people. I'll take 10 people and work with them. And it's interesting to me. There's people, right, that will come to the mentorship gung-ho, and they've been working mediumship and they've been developing for 5-6 years or whatever else, but they've never done a psychic reading. And it's funny because in the mentorship, I give them monthly goals, but I also, and one of them is doing an amount of psychic readings for that month, and it's interesting to watch kind of them scramble. But once they get into it and start doing it, they see they can do it, right? There, and they can, continually hone that part of their own craft there. It's interesting to me that in today, now we have more people that are mediums than good psychics. And it's really, really hard. And I love a good psychic reading. You know what I mean? Oh, you're going to tell me what you see, you know? And so it's always interesting to me because it's like, I could find a great medium. I can't find a great psychic there. That's why to find Deb, when I heard Deb, you know, that's why when she gave me that reading, I was like, Deb's phenomenal.
The psychics have been vilified doing this work, which is just mad. But you know, I would suggest again, I wouldn't, for anyone again that does readings, I would never set out necessarily to do a mediumship reading, a psychic reading, or a soul reading. I would learn the skill sets and allow the reading to go where it needs to go. It's like a dance. So sometimes you start with the soul into psychic, into mediumship, and it stays there. Other times you're straight into mediumship, and it is that. Other times it's just like, and it should always be reflective of working within the greatest need of your client. So if you have a client who's had real problems at home, real troubles in the past, they've lost their granny years ago, and they're in a real emotional, difficult situation, and you spend an hour talking about their grandmother as she once was in the past tense, you're flexing your own muscles. You're not doing anything for anybody else that's any benefit. You're doing your own thing on someone. So you should be more liberal with your understanding and try to work within all of the needs of your clients. Otherwise, you're going to end up with one trick pony, and your mediumship is going to be incredibly self-indulgent.
Yeah, that's great. Good note to leave on. Listen, what do you have coming up? Because I know there's a lot of people on this live right now, actually, and we didn't even get to questions, and that's okay because I just have things on my phone. Watch party here. There's a watch party on my computer. Yeah. I don't know where to look at. But what do you have coming up in terms of classes? Because I know that you were supposed to be here at the Journey Within, and I thought Deb was supposed to come with you actually because she was.
Yeah, she was unfortunately. Yeah. Well, Janet has put the class I was going to do in June online. So that's coming up online. People can book to come. It's a 5-day event. And next week, I've got a 3-day event with Janet. So you can book through the Journey Within. And that's a 3-day psychic detection course online. So I'm really excited about that. I love detection. And can I quickly say about detection quickly?
Yeah.
People developing.
Back? Is that coming bigger again, or is that coming more?
It's always been big in my world. As I've always worked. I'm always working on it. I think it's one thing I like about it is if I were taking a group of psychic developed people psychically or mediumistically, we learn certain things. Within detection, whether you're interested in detection necessarily or not, but within detection, we looking through the eyes of the victim, the victor, timelines, psychometry, mind quests, gut reaction. And there's so many more facets in detection that add to the some knowingness of the spirit worker. And for that alone, I think it's so fantastic. And people often get a little bit snooty with detection, but people that might seek us out in the future have no one else to turn to for always. We are the last ditch attempt and of getting any kind of clarity or closure. And I think it's hugely important. It should come back because if good readers are listening, detection cases will come find you anyway. And if you're unable to work with them, what a terrible shame you don't have the skill sets to be able to bring some energy and some power and some knowingness. So.
You just called me out, I think. I've had people email me about detection, and I'm like, no, let me send you to someone else. I don't work with that. I just don't feel like it's my skill set.
No, but you know, there's ways of doing it. You can do it mediumistically, but so much of it is our own soul's hunches, knowingnesses. Yeah. And I don't know. I love it all, but.
So you have that's a 3-day class with Janet. Do you know the date on it? So it's a 3-day psychic detection next week, you said, I think it is?
I think it's next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off the top of my head.
So you can go to the Journey Within. I think it's
but there's stuff. They go to TonyStockwell.com. We're putting more online stuff all the time because we're not allowed out, are we? So we're going more online as we go. But,
good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
No
for
worries.
giving us your time, energy, and able to kind of just have a discussion. I feel like it's just, I don't know. I just feel like these things aren't talked about. It's really quite odd to me. You know what I mean? To have
Yeah,
a dialogue like that.
absolutely. Yeah, they're crazy. But, I would encourage everyone to sing their own song and dance their own dance and stop looking at who's watching.
Yeah.
Just do it right, do it properly, and do it with truth. Then you'll be fine.
Beautiful. Tony, thank you so much again for
No
joining us. I know it's
worries.
late there in England, so
That's
I
okay.
hope you and your family stay safe.
God bless. Thank you, and you. And love to you all. God bless everyone. Thanks so much for listening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.